Hello, my name is Jackie Charette, and I will be discussing gender discrimination in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 is a piece of legislation passed to end discrimination based on protected class characteristics, such as race, religion, color, sex, or national origin. This legislation came about during the peak of the Civil Rights Movement. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was proposed by President John F. Kennedy, but after a lengthy battle with the House and the Senate, was not signed in until July 2, 1964, by President Lyndon B. Johnson. Title IX of the Civil Rights Act specifically deals with discrimination of color, race, religion, sex, or national origin in all aspects of the workplace, such as, but not limited to, hiring, promoting, and termination of employment. This applies to all organizations with 15 or more employees and federal, state, and local governments. It also applies to private and public universities and colleges, employment agencies, and labor organizations. After Congress passed the Civil Rights Act, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the EEOC, was created via the Title IX section, a year after the Civil Rights Act was signed into effect. Congress has given the EEOC almost complete autonomy when dealing with enforcement of the Civil Rights Act. The EEOC enforces the laws that prohibit employers from using protected classes to discriminate against potential or current employees within all terms and conditions of employment. The EEOC's most recent strategic plan has stated three main goals of their organization. 1. Combating employment discrimination through strategic law enforcement. 2. Preventing employment discrimination through education and outreach. And 3, delivering excellent and consistent service through a skilled and diverse workforce and effective systems. One of the biggest pushbacks in the era of the Civil Rights Movement was the fear or disagreement with the Affirmative Action Plan. Affirmative action is defined as an action or policy favoring those who tend to suffer from discrimination, especially in relation to employment or education, and this is also known as positive discrimination. The main goal of affirmative action is to have America's workforce and educational system accurately represent what America looks like, with the integration of women, people of color, people with disabilities, and/or differing religious beliefs and national origins into the workplace and school. White men have made up less than half of the population in America and yet hold 98% of CEO positions, 86% of law firm partnerships, 90% of top jobs in the news media, and until 2008 exclusively held the position as President of the United States. An employer has two options for the affirmative action plans, which are voluntary and the Executive Order 11246 plan, which essentially is involuntary affirmative action. A voluntary affirmative action plan includes reasonable self-analysis, reasonable basis for concluding action is appropriate, and reasonable actions. Employers should be extremely careful when conducting these affirmative action plans voluntarily and make sure they are always coinciding with the law. An EO 11246 plan is when the government requires employers to take an affirmative action plan. The employer must have a written and formal plan, acknowledge the problem to be corrected, have moderate and not unduly burdensome methods of correction, and cannot be utilized as the basis for discipline or termination of decisions. Huang versus Twitter is a gender discrimination case that was brought to light in early 2015. Tina Huang was a former Twitter employee who believed that she was terminated from her employment based on the fact that she was a woman. Huang claimed that men in the company dominated the senior positions in the software engineering group where she was employed. She approached the chief executive officer, Dick Costello, to voice her concerns and was immediately put on indefinite leave from the company while Twitter looked into these claims. After waiting months to hear back, she ultimately resigned from her position in May of 2014. Twitter has denied the allegations that men dominate their senior positions, stating that women make up 10% of their worldwide technical staff and 21% of their leadership staff. After receiving Huang's complaints, Twitter has promised to raise those figures to 16% in technical staff and 25% in leadership by the end of 2016. Hong versus Facebook is a case made by Chia Hong, who is a former Facebook employee who sued Facebook claiming that she suffered 3 years of harassment and was wrongfully terminated in October of 2013 after making complaints of harassment and discrimination against not only a dozen of her colleagues, but also her boss. Facebook has denied all claims, with their spokesperson releasing the statement. We work extremely hard on all issues related to diversity, gender, and equality, and we believe we've made progress. In this case, we have substantive disagreements on the facts, and we believe that the record shows employees were treated fairly within the company. Some potential plans for workplace action compliance within the law would be: 1. Have a standardized and non discriminatory plan for hiring, promoting, and termination of employees. The more standardized of a system that you can have, the less able someone is to make a claim that discrimination was made. 2. Embrace and celebrate diversity within the workplace. Acknowledge the environment that you create in the workplace and let it be a place that differences among people are celebrated and encouraged, and not just having one set of standard looking employees. Number 3, have a plan to combat potential discrimination within your workplace. Have a plan set out to protect your employees if they are discriminated against based on protected class characteristics and prevent that as much as possible. Number 4, stay informed and up to date on new laws and expectations of the EEOC. The more reading that you do and information that you learn, the easier it is to comply with the law and follow guidelines. And lastly, number 5, seek out EEOC resources. Part of the EEOC's statement is to educate via outreach, so utilize the resources that they provide to keep your organization in compliance with their rules and regulations.